One of the hardest and most painful things about being discarded by an avoidant, especially a dismissive avoidant, is the lack of empathy they showed you. Your heart was absolutely shattered and crushed. Yet, they are often stone cold, and their behavior is showing no regard for the pain that you're in. You might have been blindsided, your heart shattered in pieces, and they are just completely cold to it. And then they move on with their life like nothing ever even happened, like you never meant anything to them. They also, during the relationship, can fail to show empathy for your needs and your feelings, just shutting down and getting distant every time you try to connect to them on an emotional level. And it can feel like you just don't matter to this person. It's not that they can't feel empathy because you're not dealing with a personality disorder, but they do struggle to empathize with their partner. Emotionally unavailable people struggle with empathy in general because one of the core components of emotional availability is the ability and the willingness to empathize, to share their partner's feelings, to care about their partner's wants, needs, emotions, the thought process of how do I show up for this person? How do my actions impact them? Those thoughts, those feelings and concern simply do not occur in the mind of the unavailable person. And a lot of it has to do with oxytocin. A person that's emotionally unavailable, regardless of label, generally received some form of childhood emotional neglect, meaning they were not exposed to oxytocin much as a kid. Oxytocin is the bonding hormone. It's what bonds you to other people, whether it's a child, a pet, a family member, or a romantic partner. And without that emotional nurturing, the oxytocin really wasn't there. Oxytocin, however, is more than just bonding. It also is scientifically directly linked to empathy. And people with low oxytocin levels generally struggle with empathy. They struggle to relate to the emotions of others. Now, with the avoidant, your emotions are uncomfortable to them. They have a strong discomfort in caring for others. It means vulnerability, it triggers or insecurities that all stem from that childhood emotional neglect. And they were programmed essentially from a young age to solely focus on themselves. They didn't have their needs met, so they learned that the only person they could rely on was themselves. So they essentially become completely self-focused, not considering the needs or feelings of another person. And when that person has needs and feelings and emotions, it causes them to feel uncomfortable and the walls go up even further. And this can really result in coldness, a lack of empathy. And they're really not sharing your emotions at all. They're not considering the pain that you're in. Now, they're not trying to hurt you. That's not their goal. It's not a personality disorder like narcissism. And narcissists can try to hurt you. They often do. But they're not exactly going out of their way to not hurt you either. So when a person struggles with empathy, and empathy is something that they really have a hard time with, well, they generally tend to be emotionally unavailable people because, again, that lack of empathy. And that also ties into bonding, since oxytocin is linked to empathy and it's the bonding hormone. The other core component of emotional availability is the ability and the willingness to bond with your person, to form a deep bond, a deep love, a deep connection. It goes hand in hand. If you struggle to bond, you're going to struggle to empathize. And if you struggle to empathize, you're going to struggle to bond. Now, avoidants can learn to grow that capacity. They can learn to bond, oxytocin bond, and feel that empathy on a deeper level. But it really does require a commitment to self-work. And therapy with a licensed psychotherapist is an absolute must, along with a commitment to a change in behavior, the willpower to follow through, to do something differently when they get triggered. The human mind learns in repetition. The more you repeat anything, the more automatic it becomes. So repeating a new behavior, especially when there's an emotional trigger involved, will reprogram the emotional mind and grow that capacity. Instead of shutting down and withdrawing, if they force themselves to engage and communicate, doing so in repetition, things like that, it grows the capacity. The brain has amazing neuroplasticity, and it's scientifically proven that you can change your attachment style all the way up into even your 90s. But a person has to want it. You can't force someone to grow their capacity to become self-aware or work on themselves. But when they showed you a lack of empathy, it's because they do lack empathy for you. They're not empathizing with you. You may be empathizing with them, but they're not empathizing with you. And if you're looking for that deep love, that deep bond, that deep connection, you're not going to get it from an emotionally unavailable, dismissive avoidant. Not until they work on themselves and become an emotionally available person. No matter how hard you love them, no matter how badly you want it to work, that love is not going to fix them. And it's important to accept that and recognize your worth and understand that you can empathize with them because that's who you are. And it's okay to have empathy for their wounds and their insecurities, but it doesn't mean that you are obligated to be on the receiving end of unhealthy, hurtful behavior that stems from their wounds. You can hold boundaries and still feel empathy and recognize that you do deserve better than what they gave you.